You can start.
I think Stanley and I often have a very good synergy when we start talking about these things, because I always look at what a particular product is and what it will mean for the client and how I can fit it into the client's business processes. And Stanley somehow makes that work. And I think the way that the spatial viewer came up, I always use a very good example, and Stanley, we spoke about it earlier, to say about the TerraHub solution, in that this is a solution that was basically made to say that, on a base level, we want to inspect some solar panels and we want to have a look if there's any anomalies on these solar panels, and then we can tell the guys, we can tell the maintenance guys, listen, this is where there's a problem, go and fix that. So as basic as that. But getting even further more into the product, we realized, listen, they've actually got a very sophisticated SCADA system there that's giving them very good information in terms of the power output that's coming from that particular line or that particular string. And we're giving them the anomaly that's coming from that solar panel if we pick it up during a thermal survey. But then they've got these two islands of information. And that's where, our spatial viewer as a very good product became the central part of that solution again, to say that we do not want these, there's so many nice technologies out there, but we don't want these different islands of information.
Yeah.
We actually want to bring them a little bit, all central, so the client's got, and I hate using the word because it's quite jargon, but so the client's got a central one-stop shop, so that when they log in, all of these very nice pieces of technology that collects data in the field is placed into one spot. And that's the way that I understand, or at least I sell the spatial viewer, is to say to the client, listen, firstly, everything is much easier to read and analyze if it's spatially orientated and if it's visual, rather than just databases and folders and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, Heico, you've said it. I think maybe if we step back a little bit, spatial viewer, where the term comes from and how we bumped onto it. So obviously we are a geospatial company, and many years back we've used a third-party application that did 5% of what our spatial viewer is doing.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about that application was that it just brought these islands, like you said, these islands of information together. And we always thought, no, but that should have more. We can do so much more if we do it ourselves. And as luck proved it, that product got discontinued and they stopped producing it, and our clients was using it at that stage, and we said, well, we need to do something, and we built a viewer. And because it's geospatially located, we said, well, let's just call it a spatial viewer. A spatial viewer is a nice name, and we never thought anything about it. It was just a fill the gap type of solution, and it worked fine, and the client liked it, and we just evolved on that, and suddenly it became this glue that Heico just mentioned, of this center point of bringing these islands of different data sources together, where suddenly a Word document that has no spatial relevance gets a spatial relevance, because we can actually take that Word or PowerPoint or account or PDF and put it onto a spatial space. And this spatial view of ours just evolved in making it a spatial document, and that's where spatial viewer just evolved. So it's a very nice product of ours. We love it because it just keeps on growing, and every day we have a new client with different needs, and it just fills that gap. It's such a nice, versatile application that can be a center point and then just grow from there. A very good example, and I'll just step back to this specific client that was a municipality. And a municipality is quite easy to determine islands, or let's call it different departments. So you have a town planner that has a mapping section, but then you have an account department that send bills out, and then you have a utilities department that has water, electricity, and sewer, and they are all different islands or have their own data sets and so on. And then you just continue your building plans and so on and so on. But everything that I've just mentioned has a relevance, and that is a stand and urban where these data points are looking at. And that, if you take that urban and you put it in a viewer, and that's the glue, and you just connect the lines of different departments to that one spatial object, suddenly an accounts department can know when a water meter is not working, because we just connected through a spatial point and a spatial location.
I think just also another example of that is to say that like Stanley has mentioned, there's all these different data streams that are coming in. We've recently developed a very impressive drone management portal at, the second biggest iron ore company in the world, or mine in the world, up in the Northern Cape. And they would their need was to use our spatial viewer to plot all of their drone data spatially. Okay, so whether it's been panoramics or videos or ortho photos and all of those kinds of different drone datas. But once they saw the spatial view, they said, look, we can actually do a lot more from this. So it's not just data that's coming in from drones, but there's a company called Rockma that plots all the drilling data for a particular day. There's a company called Provision that plots all the shovel positions for a particular day. And each one of those companies have got their own little platform where they have to log in and have a look, where are the drills for today? Where are the shovels for today? And they said, well, if everything can just be spatial, it will make a lot more sense. So now we've got the drone data, their 12-week planning, their drill data, their shovel data, all in one central location, which is run by this spatial viewer.
And that's not linked to a specific industry, an issue that's a specific industry. We just spoke about municipality, now we with mining, but on that mine, there's different vehicles. You have a truck, you have a shovel, you have a bulldozer, you have drones flying, and they all are looking at the same asset. So each client, if it's a cell phone company that has a tower and assets on there, if it's mining, if it's oil and gas, so we're all talking about these assets, and these assets are sitting geospatially on our globe, and we can tie these lines to that asset and then feed information to it, but also get information back, and then track that lifespan of that specific asset. If it needs maintenance, who maintained it, who replaced it, with what did we replace it, and we can track the history of those inspections, support, and so on and so on. And our spatial view has that core, as that center point of it.
Okay, so look, I think we've mentioned it before to say that the spatial viewer and the creating of these spatial viewing platforms is at the core of iGlobe. Initially, I would say that the collection of data wasn't our expertise at all. It was purely just to provide these kind of solutions that makes people's lives a lot easier. But then we would often get irritated by the accuracy or the turnaround of data we receive for these solutions, and that's why we started getting into these sort of different acquisition techniques. But yeah, to answer the question, the tools to acquire this data is really relevant because there's quite a lot of things you can do. So I mean, I've just mentioned that it can be SCADA sensors on a thermal site, or it could be location sensors or GPS sensors on various vehicles on a mine site. Or it could be drones, or it can be bathymetric vessels. All of these data streams feeds into the spatial portal. So it's very much deliverable driven in terms of what the client would like to see. And we are able to adapt to sort of any data streams that are coming in to their solution. So whether we go out and collect the data for them, or if they've already got various kinds of technologies that are feeding data, then it's irrelevant. It can all be displayed spatially, and I think that's always very important to note. Everything we like to make the data visual and a lot more intelligent rather than just sitting in folders.
Yeah. I think just to add to that is it's maybe also not just how we capture it, and it doesn't have to be us, like Heico just mentioned. The client can capture itself. IoT devices, satellites, that technology of acquiring data is now tremendous. And our solution will cater for all of those, and it is currently. But also data formats. So data formats in the past, it was quite difficult to to get everything into a spatial viewer that can handle all of these formats. Where these days there's not really a format that we can't handle. So we can stream in live stream videos. We can capture all formats of photos or images. We can stream in ASCII files, points, encrypted data. And if there isn't a format available, our team can really very quickly or generate a format or just connect with some kind of an API to a different system to just pull that string, tie that little line back to ours, and then keep it in sync with time as well. So that's very important. So whatever information we get in, we want to make sure it's accurate. It's according to time, and that we can keep history of that. So as soon as you can start to keep history of all of that information, then it gets really cool to analyze and to predict. And our product will start to do it automatically for you. So if it starts to understand the trend, then it will predict the reports and build your thematic maps for you and things automatically. Yeah, but the product is really, it's evolving. We had a client this morning that came with something that we haven't done before, or we looked into it and we done it on a really a 5 scale, just looking at movement of assets, where in the past we will move it and record it and so on, but this is more live, quick and so on. And we threw it to our solution and our solution adapt to it. And so it's really a live product that's just evolving the whole time. And what's really cool about the solution, it is moving globally. So we've got clients now that are connecting to our solution in different parts of the world, which is great. And we don't have to physically be there to go and do the acquisition. We've evolved on that we can educate and train our clients. For instance, on the solar plant that Heico just mentioned, in COVID, we trained them online how to use their drone, fly, and very accurately capture data that feeds into the system, and we had fantastic results. So it's really amazing to see that work, and in the manner and in the short time span that we got those results back. I think it was maybe not even a month, and they bought their drones, they flew their drones, and we processed the data, and it was in the solution. So it was really quick.
I think what's also important to note about the spatial viewer, and perhaps it doesn't always come across, is that the spatial viewer isn't simply just a way to visualize your data from a location point of view or from a visual point of view. It's the intelligence that's behind it that's also incredibly important. Because once you've got all the data in the same sort of managed space, then you can start saying, all right, now we can run some reports on it. So there's a lot of dynamic reporting that you can do. Then you can start saying, okay, listen, because we've got all of these various pieces of information, let's start running some analytics. And very important, let's start building some trends from which we can then generate predictions. I think it's often overlooked, the intelligence that sits behind the spatial viewer. Like Stanley had mentioned in the outset of it, because the third-party spatial viewer fell away, we just needed to make a spatial viewer. They already had all the other intelligence, they just needed a way to view their data. Since we started developing our own spatial viewer, we needed to now build up that intelligence to make it look, so that it's a working product for the client and it's a standalone product for the client. So that's always, that's something that we can discuss for hours about all these various kinds of intelligence that we can add to it. At a minimum, it's a very smart, should I say, document management system per se. So every single asset that you've got located spatially within the viewer, you can click on and it will give a background of all the various documents that is associated to that asset. I think trying to bring it closer to home, let's try and imagine that you've got a 3D model of your house. Okay, and because we all know that sometimes in your house it's an absolute mess. You don't know what paperwork goes where and what's what. So let's say you've got a 3D model of your house, and if you were to click on your TV, then automatically it will come up. Here's the receipt from where you bought it, and here's your warranty. If you were to say, for example, click on the fridge, it will say, okay, listen, this is where you purchased the fridge. This is when you purchased it. This is how old it is. This is when you had to service it, and you've got all of your information in one central space.
Yeah.
But then you take it.
And by the way, the milk is finished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then you take it one step further. Then you can start doing an inventory system, which is something that we've already got in one of our solutions running it in Namibia at the moment. And you can start saying, okay, listen, that milk that's finished, we've purchased milk twice a week for the past 3 months. Now we've got some predictions to say this is what your bill will be for the next month or two for milk, because this is the way that you have been drinking it. So it's actually mind blowing. And I think often we also get carried away where clients say, okay, listen, we want A, B, and C, and we sort of end the meeting at Z because we say there's actually a lot more that you can do with this. Yeah. Because once you've got this data in, that data needs to be used until it's completely flat. You need to use it as much as possible. And I think we've mentioned that before. So, for example, if you fly a cell phone tower, and we've flown the cell phone tower specifically for the fact because they want to count how many antennas are on it. But then the guys realize, actually, there's a lot more that we can do with this data. The engineering guys can say, okay, listen, don't give me the 3D model. Actually, give me the mesh so I can make a CAD drawing so I can do a little bit more design work on this, So it's often the spatial viewer is not the end product that we strive to. It's only the beginning for the client to see what is actually possible once you've got all the data in one spot.
So my theory is every company currently spends 60% of their time and energy and on wastage on searching for documents or searching for the issue before they start working on it. So just look at your day and take 50% of your day and throw that away. And the other 50%, you physically do the work that you want to do. So this is exactly why we built this product and why we're evolving this product. So just think if you can walk in and what the issues are. The prediction can tell you already, because of our weather station conditions, we have certain dust problems and so on. And guess what? They are here, geospatially here, and fix them. So you physically go and study to be a specific engineer, but now you take that engineer degree that you had and you take 50% of the time that you want to do and go and search for documents, or and then often you find the document. It's an old document, and you make a correct decision on what you've studied on old, out of date information. So it's a failure. So yes, to just come back to you, I think if a company doesn't have that, they are not going to be efficient and they're going to not be competitive in the market.
So I think Stanley's 100% correct with that. And it's often it's a pain for everyone. I mean, we work with some of the biggest big boys in the country, from an oil and gas and mining perspective, and a lot of them still, they don't know where their drawings are, they don't know what this is, and so on. So I 100% agree that, the time saving from trying to find your documents, because it's obviously a lot easier to find something spatially to say, okay, listen, I'm looking for this tanker's documents, rather than trying to go through some Explorer to find it. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second thing is also data sharing, which is often a problem across all these industries. Because you want to share data with somebody, they open it, but they say, okay, listen, but we don't have this 2 million rand software to open this file that he's just sent to me. Or I need to go back to 10 years ago and put it on a flash drive and then drive it over to him, And that's definitely not the way we should be working in 2023. So that's another a very good point that I always like to mention about the Spatial Viewer, is that because it's completely iGlobe proprietary software, we are very open to integrate with other softwares that are already working in the company, and B, there is no massive install that needs to happen onto a PC for you to see what's happening on that Spatial Viewer. Everything is web-based. which means that if you've got an internet connection, you can go and see what's happening with your project, with, even on your phone. It doesn't have to be a smart computer or whatever it may be.
Yeah, just to come back to the sharing, a big thing about the sharing is duplication. So how often somebody asks you, hey, but send me a mail with a document. So I'm working on version A. I make a copy of version A and I email it to you, and then I continue working on version A. He's now going to start working on version 8.1, and you are out of sync.
Yeah.
So that's something that is really a big issue. And with the sharing ability that we just share the link, and everybody works on the same file, it is just amazing.
I think I was also just going to mention as well, I think that, most companies, if not all, in the big industries that we work in, will start moving towards a spatial visual way of managing assets, managing documents, and managing projects, essentially. It's just the way that the world is going incredibly visual, and it's going very 3D. And a lot of the softwares and a lot of the technology, such as drones and all of these kind of things, you're not going to reap the benefits of these technologies if you are not living in this 3D and visual world, which I think is very important. I mean, everything in our personal lives have changed, from telephones being everything is visual on our cell phones now. You don't operate with analog anymore. The way that we interact with social media and so on, we are a lot more on a visual sort of learning phase rather than we are just consuming a whole bunch of text. And so I think that's where the whole world is going, is 3D visual, and getting towards that metaverse, I guess.
Yeah, and to have a product that is really configurable for different people's needs, because you'll get the engineer that really wants to get his hands dirty, but then you'll get a much more senior person that wants to, while he's flying somewhere, just on his iPad, just check that a certain part of the project is working on schedule, and to be versatile, to cater the same information but in just different windows. That is very important, because some people don't want to get their hands dirty and are too scared to maybe hurt some of the information in the background versus just get the results. And that's quite nice to know that the product can do that quite easily as well. For me, what's very important now, and I can see it's coming through, is currently a lot of it might still be a little bit manual, but the viewer is starting to evolve from different industries to the same result, if it makes sense. So we'll sit with a challenge on facility management, and we bridge that, and we come back and say, wow, okay, we finally. And then tomorrow somebody walks in that looks at transportation, and they have exactly the same issue. And the product is we just configure it. We don't have to develop something. We actually just configure the workflow. And we can definitely see our next versions of the product is going to be workflow driven, where our developers are really working less on it, where the modules are just being workflow driven configured, if that makes sense. So a client, we will not even know that the client is working on a product, because they can upload the data, configure it, and push whatever, or run automatically, and then they have results, and we won't even know about it, which is fantastic. That means we have success.
And I think it's the spatial viewer in its birth is becoming a beast that we're not even aware of. I mean, we spoke earlier about that drone management, or rather mine planning management portal that we've developed. There was a different stakeholder that by chance managed to see that portal, and he had called me and he said, right, we're building a massive island in the Middle East. We're going to start construction soon. That's exactly what we want. And I said, okay, well, this is a very mining specific product. And he says, yes, but the principle of what you're doing there, we want to have that with our construction project as well. And there we go. Then it moves that way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Next week we roll out. This is
Yeah.
how quick it happened.
Yeah.
It's just, I like it. Can you do it? We had 2 or 3 meetings. Yes, fine. And next week we are rolling out.
And then you tailor it for.
And we configure it.
Yeah,
It is not that we have developed anything. It's there. We just configure it for the client and change his workflow a little bit here and there. And boom, working.
And there's a very good business to business understanding there as well, in that, you know, with that particular client, because that's the way they wanted it. They wanted to white label the solution. So, which means that when their clients log in, these guys look incredibly good because it looks like it's their solution. You know, it's all of their stylings, it's all of their logos, which we don't mind. We in the business of making people look good, because if we make them look good, we'll always be in their good books, you know.
Yeah, and a part of it that's evolved quite nicely that I'm very excited about is on the automation of your drone flights. So we've built this the Spatial Viewer drone portal that's really amazing that Heico has spoke about, and then we said, yeah, but we're doing these missions every week, almost the same missions. Okay, cool, but let's add a section in that we configure your flights for you. You save it. We treat that as a file, and that file needs to execute every week, and it drops into your drone, and the pilot stands there, and the drone flies, and it goes and does the work. Come back and feed that into the solution again. So it's just completing that life cycle. So it's amazing to see that.
So it's a good question, because a lot of what we've added to these spatial viewers, so a big component of it is obviously machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on, to automate work. And it's a question that's come up a lot at these conferences, to say, okay, listen, all of this AI, so like automatic defect detection and AI to tell a machine, you know, it doesn't have an operator anymore. The machine will go and automatically start drilling at a certain point and so on. Aren't they taking people's jobs? It's a question that comes up a lot, and it's a valid question. But look, the way that we also see it is, if we automate work, we allow that person whose work it's now automating, we free up their time to do something a lot more productive than what we call donkey work. Our client this morning came exactly with the same problem, and said that they are doing, for example, they're counting vehicles on videos to see how many vehicles are going through said intersection. And they're sitting there and counting every vehicle, whether it's a heavy vehicle or a light vehicle, and they're making those notes. And so we said, all right, well, let's just put some cameras up there. Let's run the artificial intelligence. We'll count all the vehicles. So that person will now take 15 minutes to do it, instead of the 2 weeks that it takes that person to sit there to do it. That doesn't mean that that person is not going to sit without a job. That means that person can now learn a new skill and be used in a lot more productive way elsewhere.
And maybe to come back to what I've said earlier on the 50%, where somebody like an engineer, and in this case, an engineer is sitting counting vehicles, where now the system is doing that hard crunch work, give them a result, and the engineer is doing doing the traffic planning, what they studied, and get that result out to the client, versus spending too much time in doing the itsy and bitsy stuff, just to get there and then to do their hard work. Productivity, and also horses for courses, you know, to get the right person to do the right work. So what we always try and do with all of our solutions is to build in quality assurance, and we've got for ourselves and for our clients to have certain stop points to say, okay, cool, we've done all this hard work for you, check this, make sure it is accurate, and give them the tools to go and do those checks quite quickly. And with those checks, we train the AI again to say, okay, well, but you made a little mistake here and there, so just to get that smoother. But we'll always have those checkpoints to make sure that the quality of the work at the end of the results is really good.
I think also, you know, pilots often say that as well, drone pilots. They say that, you know, all of this autonomous drone flight. So our civil aviation doesn't really like the word autonomous, because that means there's no pilot in command. But there's other countries that already implemented it, where You know, you're operating a drone that sits in a box 500, 1,000 kilometers away. You sit in the air-conditioned office here and you control the drone and it goes and does its work. So then you don't need a drone pilot out there in the field anymore flying the drone. But again, what drone pilots need to understand is that on a project, when you are doing a drone acquisition project and so on, the flying component is about only 10% of the invoice. It's only 10% of the skill. Where the real thing comes is processing that data and then obviously, like we say, displaying that data in a usable way and in an intelligent way. The flying part's not important. So if we can say to that pilot, listen, you don't need to go out to the field, spend a hell of a lot of time on the road, which is a safety risk, and then obviously it costs a lot of money driving to site and back. You can program the drone from here, and then you can spend your time a lot more productively looking at the data rather than worrying about where you're going to park the car when you go fly the drone.